Well, good morning, church. Thank you guys so much for being with us, digitally, of course, not physically. We're so excited to have you guys on this Easter Sunday. Easter's just a monumental thing for us Christians, just the understanding of that Jesus came back and triumphed over the grave is so exciting. We can try this. I'll say he is risen. Maybe you can type it in the chat. I don't know what the best way to do that is digitally. Maybe we send out an e-card that says he is risen. You respond with one that says he is risen indeed. I guess that's probably 2002. But anyway, thank you guys so much for joining us. We're going to sing a little bit to start this morning. We would love if you guys joined in at home or reflected while we sing at home. Should worship greatly. No song is too loud, no orchestra to save thee. To hail the majesty of our King. So lift your voices loud as we sing. Oh, great is our God, so let our songs be endless. So awesome His ways, how could we comprehend them? So we will make it known to our kids, and we will sing about the gracious gifts you give. We will sing your praise and pour forth your fame. We will bless your name. Let everyone give thanks, because our God is great. Oh, great is our God, and we cannot contain it. We sing from our souls, affected by His greatness. His mercy covers all that He's made, showing His glory and His grace. We will sing your praise and pour forth your fame. We will bless your name. Let everyone give thanks, because our God is great. We will sing your praise and pour forth your fame. We will bless your name. Let everyone give thanks, because our God is great. we're going to keep on singing. Thanks so much again, guys, for joining us this morning.
All these pieces broken and scattered, in mercy gathered, mended and whole, empty-handed but not forsaken. I've been set free, I've been set free. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. I can see it now. I can see the love in your eyes, laying yourself down, raising up the broken to life. You take our failures, you take our weakness, you set your treasure in jars of clay. So take this heart, Lord, I'll be your vessel, the world to see your life in me. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. I can see it now. I can see the love in your eyes, laying yourself down, raising up the broken to life. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Oh, I can see it now. I can see the love in your eyes, laying
Thank you guys again so much for joining us. You guys can take a seat or do whatever you want, I guess, because you're at home and we can't see you. But Logan's going to come up and talk at you for a while.
Well, hello, everybody. Happy Easter. He is risen. Am I right? He is risen indeed. Thank you, Chris. A little call and response here. Well, happy Easter, everyone. What an awesome time for us to be focusing on the resurrection of Christ together. What incredible hope and joy that brings to us today in a world in need of hope and joy. My name is Logan. I'm the youth pastor here at Cornerstone, and thank you for joining us today and celebrating with us as a church community Easter. And like we talked about Good Friday, even though we are not here together physically, we are still bonded together. We're still unified together, not just by this story of Easter, but also by God's Spirit that dwells in us. We are unified by Christ himself. We know Easter is a church holiday, but it's also a big time family holiday as well. So one thing we wanted to get out to you guys, especially right now, I know for kids during this quarantine and stuff, it's pretty rough. I'm sure they miss hanging out with their friends here at church, hanging out with Barbara and the volunteers downstairs. And so Barbara put together this week a specific Easter video for kids that we would love for you to check out. If you are watching on YouTube, it's going to be the first video underneath this one. I encourage you to check that out after service. Also, if you're watching on our website, there's just a little tab on the stream you're watching that says kids. That'll take you right to it. So please do check that out after service. I'm sure it'll be great to watch that with your kiddos. I know I miss seeing them around. I'm sure they miss being around. I'm sure they miss their Easter egg hunt that usually happens today. Oh my goodness, the Easter egg hunt every single year here, it's just hilarious. Like, kids are really bad at Easter egg hunts is what I found out, because they get so focused on the fact that there's candy in this one egg that they miss just the hundreds of eggs with candy in them. So what usually happens here at Easter egg hunt is like the kind of older kids, the smarter kids, get like 25% of the candy, and then the younger kids just like focus on like one or two eggs because there's candy inside of it. It is kind of hilarious, but Easter egg hunts are a great time. So hopefully you're doing one today, maybe you're doing one tomorrow, you can do a belated one. It's even fun for adults. My most fun Easter egg hunt ever was when I was 20 years old. We were watching March Madness, me and a family and friends, and my mom arranged an Easter egg hunt. And one of the Easter eggs had 20 bucks in it, so it was real. So if you want to see just pure chaos inside of a house, do an Easter egg hunt with a bunch of 20-year-old guys. If you want to see 20-year-old guys wrestling over a Snickers bar, that is where you will certainly see it, because that's what happened. So will you guys pray with me as we jump into the message today? God, we thank you that you have risen from the dead, that you are risen indeed. God, I pray that you unify us together in spirit right now, that you would open our hearts collectively as a church to what you have for us. God, that we would be encouraged by the story of your resurrection, God, that it would hit us in a way that hasn't even hit us before, God. It's your son's name I pray. Amen. The title of my message today is Risen. Such a simple word, such a simple phrase that carries such a significant impact for us. Such a simple truth that is in this word, it's undeniable, and the results of this word are unimaginable. The word and the idea behind it is an objective truth, meaning that it's something that is absolutely true or it's not true at all. It's not subject to our opinion. So when we say he is risen, we are declaring a truth that is so objectively impactful in our lives and in the world. Because if we do believe Jesus is who he says he is, then the resurrection is the most significant event in all of human history. On Friday, we talked about these unparalleled acts of love that Jesus has shown towards us in his death, but also in the moments leading up to it. And we rested in the heaviness, not of our own guilt, but in the heaviness of God's incredible love for us. So today, as we go through the story of the resurrection, I want to focus more on us seeing the resurrection as God's continuation and fulfillment of his love, not the completion of it. That's number one, you guys know today if you're following along, is the resurrection is the continuation and fulfillment of God's love, not the completion of it. And we're going to dive into that more and what that means today in Matthew 28. But I don't mean by saying that it's the completion, not the completion of God's love, that in any way Jesus' death on the cross and his resurrection is not enough. That's not what I'm saying here. It doesn't mean that it needs more to it. I'm more so wanting us to dwell and resonate on the fact that this incredible, almost unbelievable thing God has done for us. God sent his son to die for us and be raised from the dead. It is far more than we could ever need. It's far more than we could ever deserve. Yet God says, that's not the end of my love. That thing that we don't deserve, the thing that we couldn't earn, the thing that is so unimaginable that God would do for us, he says, I'm not done with you yet. So as we jump into Matthew 28 today, there's been a 3-day gap between what we talked about on Friday in Matthew 27, Jesus' death, and today, and in Matthew 28. Jesus has been dead for 3 days. There's been earthquakes after his death. The veil in the temple has been torn in two. There have been people who have been brought back to life, and other people, and they've been seen by other people. And I often think what it must have been like in those 3 days in Jerusalem. I feel like it would be pretty wild. Like, we know in Jesus' death, at least some people come to recognize in that moment who he is. We see in Matthew 27:54, it says, when the centurion and those who were with him, who were guarding Jesus, saw the earthquake and all that had happened, they were terrified and exclaimed, surely he was the Son of God. Which that is an incredible thought. These men who have been torturing Jesus, who put him on the cross, recognize him in that moment because of what happens around his death. It just must have been a wild time around Jerusalem. I mean, like, think about it. There's an earthquake that happens. I mean, we talk about earthquakes here in California, and they happen a couple times a year. Like, it must have been a subject that most people were focused on. There's probably, like, fear in the general populace. There's probably fear, I think, for sure in the religious leaders. Maybe they're thinking, man, have we made a mistake? Or maybe they're just kind of consolidating. It must have just been a wild time. But also, there's fear in the disciples. Their teacher was just killed. They have abandoned Jesus. They've denied Jesus. And I'm sure these guys were afraid for their lives as well. What's so crazy about this situation is that these guys, these 11 disciples, have seen Jesus do all the miracles. They've seen him do everything. They've been there for it. They've heard about it. They've been a part of Jesus' life and seen what Jesus can do. They've even seen Jesus raise someone from the dead, in the story of Lazarus. Yet they also, in this moment, doubt. They doubt that Jesus will do what he says he will do. He told them that this was going to happen several times in the Gospels. And in the Gospel of Matthew 20:17-19, while they're on their way to Jerusalem, right? They're on their way towards when Jesus is going to die. This isn't that long ago when Jesus tells them this. He says in verse 17, now Jesus was going up to Jerusalem. On the way, he took the 12 aside and said to them, we are going to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be delivered over to the chief priests and the teachers of the law. They will condemn him to death and will hand him over to the Gentiles to be mocked and flogged and crucified. And on the third day, he will be raised to life. Now, this is pretty clear language. Right? When I read this, this is not cryptic. I mean, this doesn't take a whole lot of intelligence to decipher. He's literally saying exactly what is going to happen. He says that the Son of Man, a term that Jesus uses to describe himself, is going to be mocked, flogged, and crucified, captured by the high priests and the teachers, and it's literally exactly what happens. It's exactly what happens, and he says on the third day, I will be raised to life. This is actually the third time in Matthew's gospel that he has told the disciples this is what's going to happen, that he will be killed and he will be raised from the dead. So as we jump into Matthew 28, the biggest question for me is why aren't they here? Right? Why aren't they right outside the tomb waiting for Jesus? I imagine, as for myself, and I imagine for most of you, we would like to think that we would be right at the tomb, right? We'd be pulling an all-nighter right outside, just waiting to see Jesus being risen from the dead. But I know how many times in my own life that I have chosen to ignore Jesus' words, chosen not to trust them, chosen not to put my faith in them, just as disciples were doing in this moment. So as we jump into Matthew 28, we're going to read verses 1 through 10. It says this, after the Sabbath at dawn on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to look at the tomb. There was a violent earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven and going to the tomb rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning and his clothes were white as snow. The guards were so afraid of him they shook and became like dead men. The angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here. He is risen, just as he said. Come and see the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell his disciples, he is risen from the dead and is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him. Now I have told you." So the women hurried away from the tomb, afraid yet filled with joy, and ran to tell the disciples. Suddenly Jesus met them. "Greetings," he said. They came to him, clasped his feet, and worshipped him. Then Jesus said to them, "Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee. There they will see me." So the two Marys go down to the tomb, and unlike the disciples, are looking for Jesus. There's some conjecture here, there's some confusion. Maybe the disciples sent them to the tomb. Maybe that's there, but it's a little unclear. But they did go to the tomb looking for Jesus. And they saw something there that they were not expecting. Right? This angel that appeared to them with this great earthquake. And he says to them, "I know you are looking for Jesus." And one of the most important sentences ever spoken, he says, "He is not here. He is risen, just as he said." He is not in the grave, and he's not going to be there again. He is risen, just like he said he would. This is number 2 in your guys' notes today, that God's fulfillment of his word is so significant in the Easter story. It's so important in the Easter story. The angel says he is risen, and that is the big billboard statement we obviously plaster all over Easter, right? We say it to each other, he is risen indeed. It's so important. It's so insignificant. But the thing here is it's not the only significant thing in the resurrection. The resurrection of Christ is also significant because it's the affirmation that Jesus is the Messiah, that he is the fulfillment of God's promise, and the guarantee that what God says will come true will happen. What God promises can be relied on. Jesus coming to earth, his death and his resurrection is something God has been promising since Adam and Eve first sinned in the garden. Right? After the devil has tempted them in Genesis 3:15, he says to the devil, "And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers, and he will crush your head, and you will strike his heel." Right? This is the first promise of Christ coming, the first looking forward. And all through the Old Testament, it's just seeded throughout. It's impossible to read through the Old Testament and not see the promises of Jesus. It's a constant narrative pushing forward towards this messianic hope, or this Messiah that will come. It's pushing God's people towards this promise that he will deliver them, that he will make a way for them. And God always follows through on his word. He's always true. It's always reliable. It's always trustworthy. So when Jesus tells the disciples that he will be killed and on the third day raised to life, it should have been something that they totally trusted. Right? They should have been camped out outside the tomb, just waiting, just knowing confidently that, hey, day 3, he's going to be out of there. And while they were locked away in Jerusalem, I'm sure they were hoping that Christ was going to do that. I'm sure they were hoping it. I don't think they forgot what Jesus said those 3 times. I don't think they just forgot the promise Jesus made to them. But I think they were scared. And I think they were unsure of what to do. And so they did nothing. But they stayed out hoping that God would show up. They didn't act upon Jesus' word. They didn't really fully trust it and really fully trust that Jesus would follow on what he said. So as the 2 Marys are running back to the disciples after they encounter the angel, I love that it says they're running back. They are afraid, but with great joy. They're frightened about what happens, but man, what an incredible, incredible thing. And when they're running back, they encounter Jesus himself. And another act of unparalleled love, and it's just a little statement here, but Jesus addresses his disciples as his brothers. And he says he wants to meet them. It's incredible considering the fact that they weren't there, right? It wasn't like they were outside the tomb and he's like, hey, you guys listen to me. They weren't there. They had abandoned him out of fear. Peter had disowned him. Yet he still addresses them in this close, familial language, saying, go to my brothers and tell them I want to see them. I'm going to go ahead of them in Galilee. I want to be with them. Despite all of this, what an unparalleled act of love. And he continues on in Matthew 28, 16 through 20. It says, Then the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain where Jesus had told them to go. When they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. Then Jesus came to them and said, All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age. So the disciples go to Galilee, and in their initial encounters with Jesus, some of them are doubtful. It almost seems crazy that at this point they're still doubting Jesus in this moment. Right? Maybe it's because they just think it's too good to be true or what have you, but I mean, they've seen him do all these miracles. They've seen him raise people from the dead. They've seen these earthquakes and these other people raised from the dead. The two Marys have told them, hey, we've seen Jesus. He's out of the tomb, and they're still doubtful. It's so easy to just be like, what are you doing? But in the same way, we still do that all the time. I do it all the time. I doubt that Jesus can do something that he says he's going to do or says that he can do. Doubt that his wisdom is better than my wisdom in situations. But then Jesus appears to the disciples. He appears to them and gives them a mission. And this passage here is called the Great Commission commonly. As Jesus tells the disciples to go and do something now with what he has done. And I want to get into that, what that go and do something means for us. But first I want to focus on two things that Jesus says about himself. Two promises that we can rely on. And like we talked about in point number 2, the story of the resurrection is much more than just being about the power that happens in the resurrection itself. It is the fulfillment of God's promise to us. It's security in knowing that God can be trusted to do what he says he will do and to be who he says he will be. So Jesus says about himself here that all authority on heaven and in earth is given to me, and surely I am with you always. Right? He makes these two promises, that he has all power in heaven and on earth, and that he is with us always. And sandwiched between those 2 points, that he has all power and he is with us, is a call to action. But the reason that the action is in the middle of that the call to action for us is sandwiched in between these 2 points, is because it's impossible for us to accomplish that without these. Right? But without his power and his presence, it's totally inseparable from the mission that God has given us on earth. It's undoable without him. But what is so mind-blowing about this is the thing that only he can do, he wants us to be a part of. He tells his 11 flawed, fearful, doubting disciples who have consistently let him down, I have all power on heaven and on earth, and I can do anything at all. I can do all things. Therefore, I'm sending you. Therefore, I'm sending you. It's mind-blowing when you think about it. Therefore, because I'm all-powerful, I'm sending you people, as flawed and imperfect as you are, to go to all nations in my name, representing me, to baptize them in my name, and to teach them all I have commanded you to do. And you can do this, you can do all this because surely I am with you always. It's such a radical concept that the God of the universe, the setter of perfection, right, he sets the standard of what perfection is, says, I want these 11 guys here to go throughout the world and share what I have done, to represent me. These 11 guys who, throughout the gospel, sometimes seem like they barely hear a thing that Jesus says. I want them to go and represent me and bring more people to know me, and then have those other people who are also flawed, imperfect, constantly seem like they don't listen to what Jesus says, as we all do, to go do the same. I have all power on heaven and earth. Therefore, you go. In my name and with my power and with my presence, I am equipping you to go into the world, to overcome the world, to teach others to do just as I have commanded you to do. Teach others to overcome the world just as Christ had overcome sin, as evidenced in the resurrection. So this brings me to number 3 in your guys' notes today. Christ has risen from the dead, so we now rise to the occasion. The resurrection of Jesus is such a significant event. It's a world-changing, history-making event that he is risen. It changes everything, and nothing can look the same on this side of the cross, right? It has to look different. And Jesus' response to his disciples and his response to us is to say, go. Right? His response is to go, and I'm equipping you, I'm giving you my power, my presence. Go into the world with the message of the gospel. It's easy to look at the disciples as they cower after Jesus' death. They are afraid. Right? Everyone in the city is probably talking about the situation, talking about them. They were afraid for their lives, I'm sure. And they were definitely hurting. Right? Jesus, their rabbi, their teacher, this close relationship that they have, has just died. I mean, their world has been shattered. So as a response, though, they end up just sitting around and waiting to see what God is going to do. Waiting to see what God's going to do in the meantime. And up the road, Jesus is already out of the tomb. He's already done that incredible thing that they were waiting for. And they missed it. For whatever reason, good or bad, they missed it. And it's easy to pick on that. But we know the story, right? We weren't in the moment with the disciples. We know, hey, Jesus has promised he's gonna die and be raised from the dead, and he does. Right? We heard that. The disciples heard that, but they doubted. They were unwilling to believe. They didn't have this up-down, this top-down view on the story. They were unwilling to believe because of the circumstances they were in. Right? And what we would say probably an understandable circumstance. Right? They're not just saying, hey, I don't want to walk down to the tomb, it's too far. I'm afraid for my life. I don't know what to do. My world has been shattered. And the same thing rings true for us today. How often do we find ourselves sitting around waiting for a situation to develop, right? Asking God to do something big, right? Maybe it's to mend a relationship. God, will you mend this relationship? And once you do, I'm going to respond. God, I need to talk to my neighbor about who you are. I need to talk to a friend about who you are. God, will you just make them come to me? Right? Give me a really obvious sign. And I'm just going to sit here and wait until the obvious sign happens. Just like the 11 disciples, as they were waiting to see how this situation developed, right? In the meantime, Jesus has already left the grave. And he says, I've already done the thing. I'm already doing this incredible thing that you're hoping for. It's already happened. Remember, the resurrection proves that God's word is trustworthy. And it is true and is worthwhile to follow it. And his command that we saw at the end of Matthew 28 is for all of us to go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them and teaching them everything he has commanded us. He says, I have all power on heaven and earth, and I am with you, now go. Right, I'm risen from the grave, go and do. What other things could we possibly need, or what other things could we possibly be looking for in order to follow the call Christ has given us? He has shown us unparalleled love in his death, and his unparalleled power is with us. His presence is with us. He's already doing those things. There's no longer any need to wait. His first thing that he told his disciples to do was to go. I am with you. Go and teach others to be with me, as I have shown and taught you. So what does this word risen mean for you guys today? My contention for us today as followers of Christ is that the resurrection of Christ should drive a response from us. Drive a response to take part in the mission that God has given us. To be a part of spreading this good news of the gospel all over the world, to the corners of the world. And that corners of the world starts for us in the South Bay. It starts for us in your home right now. It starts for us in your neighborhood right now. My encouragement for you is to remember That the resurrection has freed us from sin. Jesus has conquered death in that. And now he promises you his presence and his power to go with you to accomplish the mission he has given. So how can we rise to the occasion? Rise to what God is calling us to do. Rise to the mission he has given us. One that cost him the life of his son. One of my favorite theologians, his name is Dietrich Bonhoeffer. He's a German theologian alive in the late 1800s and early 1900s. And in his book, The Cost of Discipleship, he says this. He says, "What cost God the life of his son cannot be cheap for me. His grace is costly because it cost him the life of his son. It is grace because he offers it to us freely." Easter is all about us remembering that grace and that love given form in the person of Jesus, who made a way for us to be with the Father. And like we talked about our Good Friday service, he's given us an avenue just to rest in his presence, just to be with him, just to be in a relationship and communication and have communion with him. But he's also given us purpose in that. He doesn't just let us into the kingdom and say, stay here. He says, go. I'm giving you this mission. I want you to be a part of what I am doing. Spread the world about how I've changed your life. So today, maybe we need a reminder to be with Jesus. He promises us his presence if we would just be willing to spend time in that presence, to spend time reading his word, in prayer, in conversation with him. He says, I have died so you can have a way to just be with me. Just spend time with me. And today, maybe we need a reminder that being with Jesus, spending time with Jesus, drives us to doing things in the world for Jesus. It's easy to be like the disciples. It's easy to let fear, uncertainty, just keep us sitting around and waiting for God to do something huge when it's already happened. He says, I am risen. I'm no longer here. I have given you my power. I've given you my presence. Go and do. Maybe today you just need to trust that power and presence is with you, that you are already equipped for sharing how God has changed your life, that he has called us as individuals, and he's also called us as a church community to rise to the occasion because he is risen. Will you guys pray with me? God, I thank you for your resurrection. God, I thank you for the incredible power in it, that we have freedom from sin, that you have conquered death. God, but I thank you that that's not the only thing that is in the resurrection. God, that in that you promise us your presence. What a valuable gift. God, you promise us your power. It's more than we could ever ask, more than we could ever accomplish by ourselves. God, I pray as a church community and as individuals in it, we would receive this call that you have for us to go to the nations and tell them of what you've done. God, that we would trust that your presence and your power is with us. You'd encourage us along the way. God, and that we would take time to just be with you. That we would take time just to rest in your presence. But God, I do pray that that time spent with you does drive us to go and do. To go and do the mission you have given to us. See yourselves in my pray. Amen. We're going to continue in worship today through a couple more songs. Grab your friends, your family, whoever you're watching with. If you're grabbing by yourself, if you're watching by yourself, just sing along with us. Join us as we glorify and thank God for what he has done.
Grace, what have you done? Murdered for me on that cross, accused in absence of wrong, my sin washed away in your blood, to too much to make sense of it all. I know that your love breaks my fall. Scandal and grace, you died in my place, so my soul will live. Oh, to be like you, give all I have just to know you. Jesus, there's no one beside you. Forever the hope in my heart. Death, where is your sting? Your power is as dead as my sin. The cross has taught me to live. In mercy, my heart now to sing. The day and its troubles shall come. I know that your strength is enough. The scandal of grace, you died in my place, so my soul will live. Oh, to be like you, give all I have just to know you. Jesus, there's no one beside you. Forever the hope in my heart. And it's so because of you, Jesus. It's so because of you, Jesus. It's so because of your love that my soul will live. And it's so because of you, Jesus. It's so because of you, Jesus. It's so because of your love that my soul will live. Oh, to be like you, give all I have just to know you. Jesus, there's no one beside you. Forever the hope in my heart. Would you guys continue to sing with us? I hear the Savior say, thy strength indeed is small. Child of weakness, watch and pray. Find in me thine all in all. For now indeed I find thy power in thine alone can change the leper's spots and melt the heart of stone. Jesus paid it all to him I owe. Sin had left a crimson stain, he washed it white as snow.
I stand in him complete. Jesus died my soul to save. My lips shall still repeat, Jesus paid it all. All to him I owe. Sin had left a crimson stain. He washed it white as snow. Oh, praise the one who paid my debt and raised this life up from the dead. Oh, praise the one who paid my debt and raised this life up from the dead. Oh, praise the one who paid my debt and raised this life up from the dead. Oh, praise the one who paid my debt and raised this life up from the dead. Oh, praise the one who paid my debt and raised this life up from the dead. Oh, praise the one who paid my debt and raised this life up from the dead. Oh, praise the one who paid my debt and raised this life up from the dead. Oh, praise the one who paid my debt and raised this life up from the dead. Jesus paid it all to him I owe. Sin had left a crimson stain. He washed it white as snow.
We're going to keep on singing this morning, guys. We're going to take the energy up a little bit because, after all, it is a celebration. Jesus rose from the dead. He is risen, and now in the chats you say he is risen indeed. We'll keep it going.
Was dead in sin, alone and hopeless. A child of wrath I walked, condemned in darkness. Your mercy brought new life, hidden in your love and kindness. Raised me up with Christ and made me righteous. You have brought me back with the riches of your amazing grace and relentless love. I'm made alive forever with you, life forever. By your grace I'm saved, by your grace I'm saved. Lord, you are the light that broke the darkness. You satisfy my soul when I am heartless. If ever I forget that you're my true identity. Show me who I am and help me to believe you have brought me back with the riches of your amazing grace and relentless love. I'm made alive forever with you, life forever by your grace. I'm saved by your grace. I'm saved. My sin has been erased. I'll never be the same. My sin has been erased. I'll never be the same. You have brought me back with the riches of your amazing grace and relentless love. I'm made alive forever with you, life forever by your grace. I'm saved. You have brought me back with the riches of your amazing grace and relentless love. I'm made alive forever with you, life forever by your grace. I'm saved by your grace. I'm saved.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today. Happy Easter to you. We love you guys. We will see you next week.